Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, joined today by Adam Pfeifer of FTN. Adam, what is up? You are dressed in the Bills colors today.
We were talking before we hopped on. I mean, it's my entire wardrobe, so it would be very odd if I wasn't wearing anything Bills related, but especially after Sunday. I mean, massive win. Turns out Josh Allen is still good at football after week one. Shocked. But yeah, I mean, I have to wear Bills pretty much 6 days out of the week. But no, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, and you've been on the show once before, and what I generally like to do with people is, I'll go 3 questions for the guest. We've already done that with you, so today we're going to do 3 questions about the Buffalo Bills and Dynasty. So you dressed the part. We'll also have some deep waiver wire ads. We will go over risers and fallers, and we've got big news to discuss. Jonathan Taylor may be coming back. Cooper Kupp may be coming back. Jameson Williams may be coming back. Dallas Goedert may be mattering to the Eagles offense. All kinds of exciting things happening in the fantasy football world. Let's get started, though, with 3 questions about the Bills and Dynasty. I do think a really interesting team because obviously Josh Allen is either QB1 or QB2 or QB3 in Dynasty. Stephon Diggs, a little bit old, but a clear top 2 or 3 guy for contenders right now and still a top 12 guy for everybody else. And then a lot of question marks. James Cook, we'll start with him. Love the usage outside of the red zone so far this year. Looks like we might actually have a running back for the Bills catch 50 passes. He's still young, wildly efficient. How high is too high to rank James Cook in Dynasty?
Yeah, it's really tough because we just saw, and as a massive Bills fan, I've also been a huge fan of Devin Singletary's. He is not as talented as James Cook, but we did see them, use Singletary in a similar 16 to 18 touch role. And then once he had his rookie contract up, they moved on. So I don't think that's out of the range of possibilities. But at the same time, James Cook is more explosive. He's better in the passing game. And we've seen that, with obviously the Bills. After that week 1 game, it was Josh, you have to start taking the layups. And that was the key for me in the offseason was, will Ken Dorsey design more layups for Josh Allen? Then defense has to start, moving up, and then you can take the deep shots. And that's what we've seen the last 3 weeks, where the Raiders game, it was all check downs. A lot of that, again, was the Washington game. And then last week, it was kind of okay, everything was working. But no, like you said, I mean, James Cook's target share is doubled this season. It was 6% last year. It's hovering around 12% this season. Last week was interesting, too, because he finally got the short yardage touchdown. Going into that game, I believe he had played 3 snaps from inside the 5. Latavius Murray and Damian Harris going into last week had combined for 12. So obviously he played a little bit. He played a couple, 2 carries inside the 5 on Sunday, scored one of them. I do think it's a little bit I don't want to say it's a fluke, but they handed the ball off and then went really fast hurry up.
They were trying. I thought it seemed very intentional. They were going to get James Cook a touchdown in that situation.
Josh Allen clearly wanted him in the end zone.
Yeah,
Josh Allen pushed him from behind to get in.
If he even got in.
Yeah, I actually didn't think he got in. But
the question: how high is too high?
I don't think he's a top 12 running back. But
and that's where I think I'm right on the edge of that. I actually have him just inside. I want to ask some guys who are similar age, James Cook or Javonte Williams in Dynasty.
If you asked me, even before the season, when we knew Javonte would be slow to come out of the season, I would have still leaned Javonte. But based off because we saw James Cook super efficient as a rookie last season, albeit on a small sample size, but he's been really good again this year. The offense, and that's the thing too with the Bills, when I talk about players outside of obviously Stephon Diggs for Dynasty, this whole team is young. Josh Allen, young, and he's guaranteed, he's not going anywhere. Same thing with the management, same thing with the head coach. And I thought the Bills' run game has been a pleasant surprise. So I would actually go James Cook now.
I would too, James Cook or DeAndre Swift.
These last 3 games have made this very interesting now because, I mean, Swift's still on a 1-year deal. And I would still lean Cook just because we know he'll be on a top 5 offense for at least the next couple seasons. But if you told me Swift got re-upped with the Eagles, it'd be a very, very interesting discussion.
One more, you can just give the one-word answer because we're going to talk about this guy as a faller at the end of the show. James Cook or Rhamondre Stevenson?
James Cook.
Easily James Cook for me. So yeah, I do actually have him just inside the top 12.
Yeah, maybe he is inside the top 12. I haven't done like a
Right.
redo of dynasty ranks because I've been doing so much seasonal stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's been very polarizing too. I feel like for the last 4 months, right?
Question number 2, will Gabe Davis ever be anything more than what he has been? And I want to, like, I'm not putting Gabe Davis down when I say that. I think he is a fantastic guy to have in your lineup as a number 3 wide receiver or a flex. He might score you 15 or 20 fantasy points that week. He might get 1 target. He might still score 15 fantasy points on 1 target. You just never really know exactly, but very good at his role. Is he ever anything more than this? Is he ever a 20% target share guy?
I mean, not when you have Stephon Diggs there, obviously, but I think Gabriel Davis is just always going to be a upside wide receiver 3, like you said, and that's fine. I think in this offense, like, he is somebody that's been much better if you look at his splits against zone coverage. So I feel like we talk about that a lot with like Ayuk and Debo in terms of zone man splits. Davis has been really good against teams that play a lot of zone. You look at the Raiders game, he had 90 and a touchdown. They play mostly zone. Last week, Vic Fangio's played a lot more zone with Miami compared to years past when they've been so man heavy. He scored. Like, you're hoping he scores on 6, maybe 7 targets for his ceiling. And that's fine for a wide receiver 3, especially where, you know, this time last season, he was being drafted as high as, you know, we've ever seen. So, yeah, I think the way you worded it is perfectly. Like, I don't think he'll surpass this, which is still a lot of weeks where he'll be a top 20 receiver and some weeks where he'll have 3 catches for 40 yards and won't score.
I did want to just address a question I saw in the chat before we get to our last bill question. Do I spend every fab dollar on Jaleel McLaughlin? We've got waiver wire coming up. We're going to spend a lot of time on the rookie running back and what we're doing, but I lean towards probably, and it's a deep dynasty league. Question number 3, Dalton Kincaid. Is he going to happen this year, or can we wait to 2024 to buy low? My rookie tight end strategy, and it's failing miserably with Sam Laporta right now, but for the most part, my strategy has been, let's just wait until the following October and we'll buy them cheaper than they were in the rookie draft because rookie tight ends are almost always bad. So far, it looks like not a bad strategy with Mayer or with Kincaid. Not working out so well with Laporta. Do you think Kincaid gets it going at all this year, or is he just a long-term play?
I think he gets it going this year. I think we've also, because we knew going into the season that rookie tight ends rarely are incredibly productive, and then we've seen what Sam Laporta's done, and now we're like, okay, what's going on with Kincaid? What's going on with Michael Mayer? Kincaid will get it going this year. I don't think he's going to be to the point where it's like we view him as somebody you have to start every week, like Laporta suddenly a top 6 tight end. But, I mean, just last week, season high in, he started to play more. He ran a season high in terms of percentage of routes run. He had a 17% target share, which was tied for a season high. What I want to see from the Bills is they're using him right now in very, very, very low risk plays, right? It's a lot of chipping a defensive lineman and then leaking out for a quick pass. They're not using him as the, essentially the slot wide receiver that we've heard, which rarely happens, I feel like. But there are occasions like last week against Miami where he does line up in the slot against a linebacker and it's game over. So I think the Bills want him at some point to be in that Cole Beasley role. Not saying he's going to catch 80 passes, but yeah, I think there's going to be a stretch at some point this season where he starts to be close to what we hope for. But in terms of like expecting what we've seen from Sam Laporta, probably more so next year.
Right. I think that's probably right. That's enough on the Bills. Let's get to the big news. Jonathan Taylor going to return to practice, I believe, tomorrow. He will be active at the 21-day window will be opened. His head coach actually saying that it's a possibility that we could see him this week. They've had conversations and they're positive. Now, I've not heard anything from Taylor or from Taylor's camp that suggests that his feeling towards playing for the Colts on his current contract has actually changed. He's currently my RB6 in Dynasty. I think he could come back this week, start, and become RB2 in Dynasty this week if we knew he was all the way back in with the Colts. How are you handling Taylor? Do you feel confident he's coming back to play for Indianapolis? Do you feel confident he's going to make it more than a game before he needs to come out for another injury? I mean, what's your feeling right now on him?
So I feel like when we do a lot of this fantasy analysis, it's okay to just not know. I have no clue what to expect from Jonathan Taylor, to be honest. But I will say, if he gets anything close, and I can't believe I'm saying this at this point in the season, if he gets anything close to what we're seeing from Zach Moss usage,
right,
yeah, he's going to be, at worst, a top 3 running back in Dynasty, because Zach Moss is he's at 40. He's either seeing a carry or a target on 42% of his snaps. It's the highest rate in the NFL. It's higher than McCaffrey. It's insane. And then you add the fact that Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson look fantastic, and the offense looks like it's going to be better than league average at this point with what we've seen from Richardson. He's been unbelievable. And then the fact that Jonathan Taylor is still really good at football. So, yeah, I think as long as he stays healthy, I don't know what's going on. I did see, I think Jay Glazer reported yesterday or the day before that no teams have made any offers to the Colts for Jonathan Taylor, which kind of makes sense considering Miami has the best running back in NFL history now all of a sudden, which is good for them. And then Minnesota obviously made that trade for Akers. So I don't know if there is a team.
Well, there's one that I think makes a ton of sense.
Baltimore?
Yeah.
As somebody that has a really good dynasty team with Jonathan Taylor, I would not be opposed to that. Right. But then kind of everybody wins, right? Taylor gets a great spot where he can get all the work. Zach Moss can still be useful. So I don't know what's going on with the situation, but I do know if he's playing for the Colts and gets the Zach Moss role, he's going to be really, really good.
I would feel more comfortable with Taylor almost anywhere next week than in Indianapolis, just because, and some of this is speculation on my part. Some of it the NFL is speculating on. They sent a letter to the Players Association saying, stop advising running backs to not play through injuries. It's a violation of our agreement. But Taylor has done so far the best job of all the running backs of not having to play for 4 weeks or practice for 8 weeks and getting paid for all of it. And so I do have concern that and he's not going to trade him, he's not going to play through anything. That's really my only concern. I would love to see him back. I think honestly, if he's happy in Indianapolis, they might be the favorites to win that division.
Yeah.
Number 2, Cooper Kupp will be returning to practice, but his coach, Sean McVay, says there's a difference between return to play and return to perform. I don't know for sure that they're going to rush him back. We're going to talk about Puka Nacua because he continues to skyrocket up the dynasty rankings in just a little bit. But do you view Kupp as just as soon as he's back, he's Cooper Kupp again? Or are you thinking as a Cooper Kupp dynasty manager, this might be my last off ramp with people thinking that he's about ready to come back?
Yeah, it's really tough because you have the situation where at worst, even if you think Cooper Kupp goes back to being this, 32% target share player and everything, and worst case is Puka goes to the Robert Woods role. The difference is, and I love Robert Woods, he's actually one of my favorite players, in the league. The difference between that is when he was with the Rams, he wasn't getting open at this rate. He wasn't getting targets at this rate. He was getting 7-8 targets a lot of games, but he's also getting those jet sweeps. And we've seen them do that a little bit with Puka because he did that in college too. But the way he's getting open against zone coverage and everything, this is not a fluke. So, and the way Stafford's playing, I think Kupp is somebody you're starting the second he's active, obviously. But I don't know if he's back to being. Because preseason, I had Kupp as my wide receiver 3. I had him ahead of Tyreek Hill, which obviously looks terrible right now. But I think I don't think. I guess the best way to put it is I don't think this is going to be Cooper Kupp 32% target share because. And the other thing too is I agree with you. I don't think he plays this week.
Right.
I think they can be cautious with him. They're 2-2. It's not just Puka that's played well. They're getting great contributions from Tutu Atwell and Kyren Williams. Stafford's playing well. The defense is playing way better than anybody expected. So I think they should and would be wise to kind of ease him in. So, but it's very interesting to see what happens.
And news item number 3, Jameson Williams is back, eligible to return this week. I need you to shine some sunshine on Jameson Williams. Get people excited. I
want to trade. I don't have him on a team. I would trade him right now, honestly.
So you're not going to help here. He is I think we should at least remember that there were a lot of people coming into last year that thought Jameson Williams might have been the best wide receiver in that class.
Mm-hmm.
He is an extremely talented dude. I just am afraid. Like, I don't think he's taking Josh Reynolds off the field. I think he's taking Khalil Raymond's role when he's ready, and that's not this week.
Yeah.
He's going to be added a lot, but kind of the same thing I said for Cooper Kupp. Now, Kupp's, it makes more sense because he's 30. So maybe it is the last chance to get off. But man, I would be just about ready to sell Jameson Williams right now if I had him.
Yeah, so I'm no help to you. I literally was going into this as soon as I saw the news that he was eligible to return this week. Perfect opportunity to trade him. Not that he's not a talented player, and not that he's not going to have some really, really impressive games, but it's not just the fact that, like, Josh Reynolds doesn't come off the field, like you said. They have Sam Laporta, who's, like, they're already not throwing the ball at a massive rate anyway. Right. I believe they lead the NFL in red zone rush rate, which, you know, Dave Montgomery's going to have 38 touchdowns. So, but then you add the fact that, say Jared Goff throws 32 passes in a game. Amon-Ra's getting 8 to 10. Laporta's getting 6 to 8. I mean, Gibbs, you would hope, is getting. Yeah, I think Jameson Williams is going to be like almost like Gabe Davis, but in an offense that's not throwing the ball as much and isn't quite as good.
Well, and he's got a ways to go to get to Gabe Davis.
Right.
He played 6 games last year. He caught 1 pass.
Yeah, and the thing with Davis too, like, he doesn't come off the field.
Right.
Like, he's going to run and play as many snaps, run as many routes, as play as many snaps as anybody. And like Jameson Williams, this team still plays a lot of 2 tight end sets. When they go 2 wide receivers, I think it's going to be Amon-Ra and Josh Reynolds. So yeah, I would use this opportunity to try to trade him, especially if, like, you are hurting at running back or something like that.
So I want to just go through a few names here. I'll try to keep it to the young guys here. Hank Dell over Jameson Williams.
Yeah, Dynasty? It's not even close for me.
Nico,
especially with the way CJ Stroud's playing.
Nico over Jameson.
Yep.
Jameson or Gabe Davis in Dynasty.
That's tough because this is a contract year for Davis, but I kind of think, like, he's a captain for that team. I think they kind of bring him back, so I'm going Gabe Davis, obviously.
I've got Jameson that's the only one of the guys that I asked that I have Jameson ahead of, and it's just barely. One more, and this isn't really big news, but we did want to talk about him, and the Eagles were talking about Dallas Goedert. He's still a part of the game plan, Adam. It's hard to lower him too much based on performance because all the tight ends who are around him have been terrible also. Do you have any hope for Dallas Goedert? Are you ranking him like a starter on a weekly basis right now? And is he still a top 10 guy for dynasty purposes?
So Goddard is so interesting because on a per target basis, there haven't been 4 tight ends better than him over the past 3 seasons. The problem is right now, he's still running routes like all the time. Yeah. The problem is with the Eagles offense, they're running the ball more and more effectively. They're 5th, I believe. They're like 63% red zone rush rate, which is top 5 in the NFL. We know when they get inside the 5, it's either going to Swift or they get even closer. We know what they're doing. And then it's this RPO scheme offense still, which when they run the RPOs, it's going to A.J. Brown if they're throwing the ball because that's how these plays are set up. And like Dallas Goedert, like after that week 1 game where he had 0 catches, they designed some screens for him, which they occasionally do. He had 2 screen targets in that Minnesota game where he had like 5 catches for 20 yards. And he's had 1 since. Like, I just think, and the other thing, and this is my concern going into the season, do you want to guess how many end zone targets Dallas Goedert has since 2021?
Like 4.
It's exactly 4, so well done.
I think 2 of them might have been from Gardner Minshew.
Right. This team doesn't throw in the red zone very much, especially this year. And they haven't, even when they do, it's not gone to Dallas Goedert. So right. It's almost like, it's not quite to the Kyle Pitts level because like Goddard's still giving you something most weeks. He's also not competing for targets with Jonnu Smith. But yeah, you're kind of like stuck because like Laporta, we're starting over him, right? But like after that, like, are you really starting? That's a bad example because he's out a couple weeks now. But like I don't think you were going Freiermuth over him. I don't think you're going Hunter Henry over him.
I might go Hunter Henry over him. I think I'd go Cole Kmet over him.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see it against a non
Broncos team.
And I love Justin Fields, and he played great regardless of the opponent. But yeah, like I would like to see this offense really be functional for a couple weeks. But I don't think it's crazy to have Komet and Henry over him. It's just been, and then in that same kind of quote you talked about with Sirianni, he was doing what we hate coaches to do with tight ends and gushing about his run blocking. Like,
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a short break, and then we will get into the deep dive waiver wire right after this. Okay, Adam. So the way we like to do this is we look for guys who are rostered in 10% of CBS leagues or fewer. Some of these guys are still rostered in a lot of dynasty leagues. I understand that, but some of these guys are not. And at the top of the list at quarterback, it's a short list. It's Zach Wilson and Taylor Heinicke, and Heinicke's not actually a starter yet. Zach Wilson, probably his most impressive game that I can remember in the last year and a half. Now he gets to go play against those Broncos. Is he a surefire QB2 starter this week? Is there any hope that, like he got off this season, terrible start, looks awful, but also playing a top 5 defense 3 weeks in a row, it seemed like. Mm-hmm. And then the Chiefs defense has been very good as well this season. Is there hope that as the schedule lightens up, Zach Wilson can maybe grow a little bit as a quarterback and take advantage of the fact that he's got Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and piece together like a decent QB2 season?
Yeah, so the other thing, other than Zach Wilson, that impressed me in that game, I think that was the best game we've seen Nathaniel Hackett call in years. Because what did we all expect the Jets to do once Aaron Rodgers got hurt? It was run the ball, rely on the defense. I don't think they can actually do that because, especially if you're not giving Breece like 90% of the work, because Dalvin Cook's been like the least efficient running back in the league. So if you try to run on a 1st and 2nd down, all of a sudden it's 3rd and 8, and then you have Zach Wilson in 3rd long against these good defenses. So what Hackett did last week was against the Chiefs was play action on 1st down and get ahead of the sticks, and Wilson looked more comfortable. So yeah, like I was actually thinking about this yesterday. Like, are you starting Zach Wilson over Joe Burrow this week?
I am 100% starting Zach Wilson over Joe Burrow this week.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and then the Broncos, I mean, they're allowing like almost 4 points per drive. Like, insane. Most a 10.2% passing touchdown rate, highest yards per attempt. I mean, we saw like it's just they are just unbelievably bad. So that stat line, 245 and 2. If Zach Wilson did that again, I would not be shocked.
Yeah, I think he's definitely an add in a super flex league. Make sure that he's rostered. One quarterback, I would start him over Burrow. I'd start him over Dak against San Francisco this week also. So that's a couple of guys. As we did not think we'd be saying that. The other guy, Heinicke, like we're just hoping that Arthur Smith benches Desmond Ridder at some point. And then Heinicke, I think, would probably be a QB2, and I think we'd probably see the pass rate go up a little bit for the Falcons. There were a couple of guys who got a chance to start, rookie quarterbacks, both rostered in about 5% of leagues. Aidan O'Connell, we got AOC and DTR, I guess, for the Browns. Do you have any impressions from those guys? I thought as a passer, O'Connell looked okay. His pocket presence was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything at all that I liked from DTR.
Yeah, O'Connell like had this weird thing where he just didn't target Devontae Adams till the second half, which in your first career start seems really suboptimal to not throw to one of the 3 best wide receivers in the world. But then he started to get it going in the second half. I actually didn't see much of the Cleveland-Baltimore game. Right. So like DTR was obviously really exciting in the preseason, but we expect Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson was like cleared to play in that game, but he was just they were being safe. So right. I think Watson's going to be back under center. Garoppolo, I still believe, is in the concussion protocol unless something came out today. So right. Something to keep an eye on. But I'm actually very just at least happy that the Raiders went with O'Connell instead of Brian Hoyer.
Yes, that was nice. And I think if I had to stash one of these guys, it would probably be O'Connell, just because it seems more likely that Jimmy G will go down with an injury this year than Deshaun Watson. It's probably delayed this long enough. Jaleel McLaughlin, 3% rostered, 10 yards per carry last week. It was the Bears. Looks like the most explosive Broncos running back. One of my favorite things that has happened since we started this podcast, I don't know, back in April, is that when this happens, when Puka happened week 1, I get these tweets from guys, hey, you guys talked about him back in April, back in May, back in June. And we did definitely talk about this guy as kind of Sean Payton's pet project. How do you see this Broncos running back room kind of moving forward? And somebody asked, in a deep dynasty league, which I think you would expect that McLaughlin was rostered in most of those, but not all, certainly, is he worth a full 100% of the fab?
It's got to be pretty close in a deep dynasty league. And like, it's not like he went from healthy scratch, zero snaps to playing when Javonte went out. They had a design toss play. I think it was week 3 in the red zone. It was for him.
Right.
And he scored. He's shown a lot of burst. And like when Javonte went out, Samaje Perine, I believe, was still playing most of the 2-minute work. But like, I've seen kind of conflicting stuff with Javonte. He might miss 1 to 2 weeks. He might still be able to play this week, but still, like, he's clearly somebody that needs to be added in dynasty leagues, whether Javonte plays or not. And then you add the fact that he could be out 1 to 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean, the offense has looked obviously much improved. The only thing I worry about is, like, will this defense be able to not, give up 40 points, and will he be able to get 15 carries in a given game if he starts? Because I still think they trust Samaje Perine in the 2-minute drill, which he was playing a lot last week. But yeah, I think he's pretty close to somebody that you have to kind of just go for in a deep dynasty league if you're, hurting at running back.
The other running back I had on the list, and it's somebody I've had a lot of tweets, relatively considering, about Keaton Mitchell. He's on the IR for the Ravens. Obviously, they've got the J.K. Dobbins situation. They're trying to piecemeal it together with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill and Melvin Gordon. And Mitchell, kind of like McLaughlin, like he's got some burst ability if he can get all the way back to what he was. Is this somebody you're interested in kind of rostering and stashing?
A little bit. I think the usage from the Ravens running backs last week, Justice Hill was limited coming off the turf toe, so Gus got a lot of the work. I just worry that, like, this team has been clearly, I don't know if they've been comfortable because they've just been so depleted at running back, but they've been perfectly fine giving these veterans, Kenyon Drake, Melvin Gordon, maybe work. But they also probably know what they have in every running back on that team except for Keaton Mitchell. So from just that point of view, it's definitely worth a speculative add. The other thing too with the Ravens, this has not been the offense we expected in the offseason. They lead the NFL in neutral script rush rate. They're ahead of Atlanta. They're running the ball 53% of the time in neutral game scripts. So it's not like it's okay. Even I thought when Dobbins went out, they would just go, okay, we're going to this pass-heavy offense that they kind of alluded to. But they've also been missing wide receivers too. So, but yeah, I think he's worth a definite look.
Have they had one game this season with their top 3 wide receivers and Mark Andrews healthy? Or did Beckham
So
miss
week 1, Andrews was out. Week 2, they had Odell leave. He didn't play the second half.
Okay.
And then week 3, Odell didn't play, and then obviously Odell didn't play.
And Bateman didn't play last week either.
Yeah.
So we've not really seen that pass offense with all of the weapons there.
This team just every year, especially early in the year, they're missing like 8 key players every single year. I don't know how they do it.
It is, they'd probably like to figure out how to stop doing it. At wide receiver, I got a couple of guys who are 5% rostered. Michael Wilson should be rostered in all dynasty leagues. He was just a rookie that was selected, but 5%. I mean, there are leagues that only have 2 or 3 rounds of rookie drafts. Maybe he didn't get picked. Do you think what I struggle with is Marquise Brown's going to be the clear number 1. And they're throwing the ball to their tight ends at a 25 to 30% clip. Even when Kyler comes back, can Wilson matter this year for fantasy with Brown as the number 1 and the tight ends getting this many targets?
I think he can, because I think on that final drive on Sunday, I think Ertz had like 5 targets or something. Like, he was doing nothing until that last drive of the game in garbage time. His target rate, and I kind of been tracking this. Josh Dobbs, and I think he's had like 6 starts or something over the past couple of seasons, 5-6 starts. In those starts, he's targeting tight ends like 35% of the time. I think it went down obviously after last week, but they're not using Rondo Moore in a different way in this new offense. It's still a lot of short. He's still like bottom 5 in ADOT, and then he's getting a couple jet sweeps. So his role hasn't changed. So it's really like Michael Wilson as the 2, and Josh Dobbs is playing really good football. So like he obviously should have been drafted in every rookie draft, but like you mentioned, in case it's a more of a shallow rookie draft, make sure you go get him. But I think I think he should be the wide receiver 2 for this team the rest of the season. And I expect the targets to go down from these tight ends, especially with Dobbs playing the way he's been playing.
And then any interest at all in Nick Westbrook if Treylon Burks misses another game? Westbrook was involved. DeAndre Hopkins doesn't seem to be quite 100%
That's
right now.
the thing. Hopkins, he was limited again yesterday or on Sunday.
Right.
And it's like, I can't take practice reports away from him or Henry because they aren't going to practice a lot this year. But if he keeps not practicing and then being limited, he was like under 70% routes on Sunday. Like, he's still getting targets when he's out there. But yeah, I think that's an interesting call because obviously Treylon didn't play. But at the same time, too, like, this could be a team, too. I know they won yesterday, but like, I'm still not overly impressed with them. Like, what if they're 2-6 at some point? You know, they could be a team that trades some players.
You know, they're basically playing the Colts for the lead in the division this week. That entire division sitting at 2-2. Trevor Lawrence has got Buffalo, and the Colts and the Titans are playing. One of them's going to win and be 3-2 and be in first place. Probably sole possession of first place in that division.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Like, Jacksonville's been off to a slow start, and then Houston and Indianapolis have been really, really impressive. So, and then Tennessee's obviously still 2-2 as well. But overall, I do like the call, especially because like Hopkins, he's not playing a lot in 3 wide sets or in 2 wide sets because he's been less than 100%.
And then at tight end, and I was pretty interested actually in both of these guys, but Tyler Conklin, Durham Smythe. Smythe had the game where he was kind of injured and not a part of the offense, had 4 targets last week. But when Wilson got going against the Chiefs, it was a lot of Conklin. And he had some moments last year as kind of a high volume member of this pass offense. It wouldn't surprise me that much if Conklin was 2nd or 3rd in targets on a weekly basis behind Garrett Wilson. And he's just 7% rostered. Smythe just 2%. I think anytime you are desperate for a tight end stream, just choosing Smythe and hoping he catches one of Tua's touchdown passes makes sense. But Conklin, I think, could actually be a high-end tight end too the rest of the year.
Yeah, and especially this week. I mean, both have really good matchups. Durham Smythe is really interesting because we had Jalen Waddle out in week 3, and I was like, okay, this is a good spot to maybe stream Durham Smythe. And then it was Julian Hill who was active for the first time. He ran all the routes, and then I was like, okay, well, Smythe's probably done. Last week, it goes back to Durham Smythe running most of the routes. So maybe they're kind of doing a week-to-week thing. But, yeah, I'm definitely interested in Conklin. He looked good. He, like you mentioned last year, he had some weeks last year, and Garrett Wilson should get his 30% target share. But after that, it's really up for grabs. And again, when all else fails, just look for players against Denver at this point.
Jasmine in the comments, Durham smooth. And let's take a short break and then we'll get to the dynasty risers and fallers. Okay, before we get to risers and fallers, I think it's really, I'm sorry. I've got to put this up now. The smooth is loose. It's fantastic. The quarterback position in Dynasty right now, I think is fascinating. And it's mostly fascinating after the top 4 or so. I think everybody mostly would agree right now, it's Mahomes, it's Hurts, it's Allen in some order. If you want to put it Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, or whatever, those 3 are the top 3 quarterbacks in fantasy. I feel like since he's the only guy in the top 6 who hasn't really struggled that much, Lamar's still my number 4 quarterback for dynasty purposes.
Same. He was my 4 coming in.
Then it gets really difficult because
I really want to put Richardson 5. I really do.
I have Richardson 5.
Yeah.
He is my number 5 quarterback. And so we're agreeing on the top 5. And I think like probably the next 2 for me are Herbert and Tua.
Yep.
With where we stand right now. So now obviously we haven't said Joe Burrow yet. And we haven't said Trevor Lawrence yet. And we haven't said Justin Fields, who was a top 5 dynasty quarterback for a lot of people just a month ago.
The problem with the Bears is they're going to have 2 top 5 picks.
Right.
In the NFL draft.
And then the guy, and you mentioned it, how well he's playing. Like how much longer does CJ Stroud have to do this before he's in this conversation?
He's done it already. Like the other thing too is the Bobby Slowick offense. Obviously, he was the passing game coordinator in San Fran. It's been as advertised. Like it's been And that's why I thought the combination was so fun, because Stroud is so accurate, especially in the middle of the field, and that's where Collins has won. That's where Tank Dell has won. And it's been perfect. And he's doing this without 3 offensive linemen. So I've seen enough. Like, he's an elite prospect. He's played. You can't list 5 quarterbacks that have played better than him this year. Like, you can't.
Right. So
I've seen enough.
I'm going to put you on the spot. We got Mahomes, Hurts, Allen, Jackson, Richardson, Herbert, Tua. Those are the top 7 in whatever order you want. You got to rank the next 5. Who are the next 5 currently in Dynasty?
Okay, so I still feel like Burrow should be on here.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to go Burrow, and then I'm going to go right to Stroud.
Burrow, Stroud. I need 3 more.
Lawrence. I'll still go Fields, but if they have...
So we have the same top 11. I think 12 is almost impossible. You could say 17 different names, and I'd have a hard time arguing.
Yeah,
who
it's
would
like
be your
Dak,
number 12?
Kyler, Brock Purdy.
Jordan Love, Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young, just because he's young. Russell Wilson's back. I'm going to put him up there. Kirk Cousins is a top 5 quarterback this year. I'll put him there are 11 quarterbacks, I think, now that are QB1s. I actually have it, and I might be emphasizing this year a little bit too much, but I actually have it Stroud, Lawrence, Burrow, Fields. But I can't think of a reason to rank Trevor Lawrence above CJ Stroud right now.
Yeah, it's totally fair. I know it's only been 4 games, but I've seen enough. Like, it's not like he's having 360 yards and 4 touchdowns off just straight garbage time with multiple interceptions and checking it down. He is making some of the best throws, some of the best anticipation throws. Like, you should be all in on CJ Stroud. And, like, I'm trying to think of their opponents. They faced what? Indianapolis, Pittsburgh. Jacksonville. Yeah, Jacksonville. Where he destroyed them, obviously.
Yeah.
So he's just been, again.
And they're probably going to play a lot of bad teams this year. They won like 2 games last year, so the schedule is going to be relatively easy. That division, not exactly stacked, especially in terms of pass defense, might be one of the worst in the league. Okay, let's get to the risers and the fallers now, and we've gone long enough. You said the best running back in the NFL. He might be 3rd behind McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson, but De'Von Achane has moved up. He was my RB20 coming into the week. 1 week, he's at RB13.
I haven't looked. Do you know what his rank is for the position in fantasy points through 8 quarters, essentially?
4 or 5.
He's played like 8 quarters.
Absolutely absurd. And again, like, Dave made this comment on our Sunday night podcast because I'm always the guy, and it's a fantasy football meme. Look how great this guy's been. Here's why he can't do this anymore. Like, he's obviously not going to average 10 yards per carry.
I would love to know how you feel about Kyren Williams at that rate then.
Yes. We're going to talk about him in just a moment. But where should, like, is he a top 12 dynasty running back immediately? Does he have to, like, prove that he can handle more than 10 touches in a game before that happens?
Yeah, it's so tough because you obviously don't expect this efficiency to continue. I don't know if Jeff Wilson will even be like a factor at this point, because like we saw the usage was still in favor of Mostert, and then Mostert fumbled twice on Sunday.
Right.
Achane was getting the carries inside the 10 before in the first quarter when both teams scored 2 touchdowns. There was one where they just ran it with him. Then there was one where they had him and Tyreek. Tyreek was in motion. They ran a reverse with Achane. Like, everybody knew it when he was drafted. It is the perfect fit for him in this offense, and we're seeing that come to fruition. I worry a little bit about the offensive line for Miami, but like, he can, again, not this level of production every week, but even if Mostert still gets his snaps, and even if Jeff Wilson gets a little bit when he comes back, Achane can still get 100 total yards on 13 touches. Like,
if he has 100 total yards and scores multiple touchdowns again this week, and he's facing the Giants, so why not?
Right.
There are going to be people ranking him at RB2 or 3 in Dynasty. I try to move things a little more slowly so that we don't have these boomerangs all over the place. But like, we started with a guy, James Cook, who I said is a top 12 running back.
Mm-hmm.
You'd rather have Achane than Cook?
It's really close.
Yeah. You're
clearly asking the wrong person.
Okay, let's talk about Kyren Williams. He was RB24. He is up to RB20 for me now. I still think this could all fall apart. This is the opposite of Achane, in that Kyren Williams is not really doing that many things that I find that impressive, but he's the clear workhorse back. And even if he's even if he's 29 and he's Derrick Henry's age and you only get this 1 year, that's probably worthy of a top 24 running back in Dynasty with the state of the position right now. You're concerned about Williams as well. Are you trying to sell, or do you think contenders can at least bank on this for this year?
So I'm torn because there's really nobody that can stop him from getting this workload. Like Zach Evans can't even get on the field. Like, they're not
Ronnie
trading
Rivers is the clear number 2 right now.
Yeah, and he actually looked pretty good in his touches, but it was literally like the third quarter where he came in and just gave Kyren a little bit of rest. Then the fourth quarter and overtime was all Kyren again. I do think this touchdown rate is insane. I do think it's pretty annoying for anybody that keeps streaming Matthew Stafford in good matchups. I also I think he has a hip issue right now. Nothing serious, I don't think, but I just don't think he can go the whole season getting 25 opportunities per game at his size. But then who else are they giving the ball to? So I don't think I'm usually either you either trade him high now or you don't. I'm fine with either route, honestly. If you want to hold on to him and just because I don't think there's anybody coming to take away. Now, McVay talked about it leading into last week that he can't keep getting 100% of the snaps, and he did go down, but it didn't matter because he touched the ball almost every time he was on the field. But I'm fine if you trade him at his peak value. I'm also fine if you just ride it out and say, you know what, there's nobody else that can stop him from getting maybe not 25, 28 touches, but and again, that game went to overtime, but 18 to 23 touches per game feels pretty safe for him right now.
Yeah, I think he's someone if he's found money on a team that's not really quite ready to contend yet, then I'm selling as quick as I can, because I have zero confidence that he's going to be a starting running back even next year.
Yeah.
But if I'm a contender, I'm just gonna take that found money and try to go win the league. And
I thought this team would be drafting somebody in the Charbonnet range of the NFL draft, and they didn't.
Right.
And you would think, despite how good Williams has been, they will be drafting a running back relatively early compared to most teams in the league, barring anything crazy, Jonathan Taylor trade, etc. This time next year.
One more running back in the risers, Khalil Herbert from RB40 up to RB31. I was so encouraged, and it's what we'd seen for most of the season when the Bears were competitive. Herbert was playing most of the snaps, but we hadn't seen the Bears be competitive for an entire game, so I didn't know if that would continue to be the case. Herbert looked very good against a fantastic matchup. He's the clear lead back. They're going to have plenty of games where they're way behind, but I think they'll be more competitive than they have been early in the year. Herbert, do you think that he should be ahead of Kyren Williams? I think it's easy to make the argument he's a better rusher, but the situation's probably not quite as good right now, and I don't think either of them have a long-term future, right?
Herbert's tough because, for the most part, in games he's played without Dave Montgomery, dating back to the last couple of seasons, he's been awesome. And then obviously this year got off to a slow start. They had Donta Foreman active for the first 2 weeks. But yeah, last week, the Bears traditionally, when Montgomery was there, Montgomery would play first 2 drives, Herbert would come in for the third, and then they'd go back to Montgomery. They went away from that usage to start the season, but last week they went right back to that, and that's why Herbert played as much as he did, and Roschon didn't play as much. You do have to worry about what happens if the Bears are trailing in a game again. But it's not like Herbert came off the field for every third down, every 2-minute snap last week. So I was pretty encouraged as well. I do think he's a good player, but this wouldn't be a bad opportunity to trade high as well, just because there's going to be a lot of uncertainty with the Bears given what their record is right now going into next season. And they had a 28-7 lead at one point last week. I don't think they will have that again this year.
2 wide receivers moving up in the rankings, and I feel like one of these guys I might be too high on, one of these guys I might be too low on. I know one of them you're going to say I'm too low on. So Puka moved up from wide receiver 29 to wide receiver 18 for me. He is now the number 3 rookie wide receiver for me, behind only JSN and Addison. It still feels a little bit uncomfortable, but I just couldn't ignore another week, that monstrous performance. I think you've got to believe at this time, and then we'll see how bad it is when Cooper Kupp comes back. And then Nico Collins was my wide receiver 43. That was too low. He's now my wide receiver 35. I assume you think that's still too low. How high would you have Nico ranked? Do you think he could legitimately be a number 1 wide receiver?
Yeah, so with Puka, I think it's interesting. Like, where would you rank? It's tough because the ages are massively different. But like, if Robert Woods was a rookie playing this way, he's in the Robert Woods role and then some. And like his production, it's like so ridiculously good that you can't even call it a fluke.
It's kind of like Achane though. It's double the time, or not quite double because it's 3 out of 4 weeks, I guess. But like, it's just so outlandish that it's hard to know how serious to take it.
Mm-hmm. I just think to be able to get open at this rate and get targets at this rate, it's legit. Right. For Collins, you said what, wide receiver 35?
35.
I honestly think that feels about right.
Would you rather have him or his teammate Tank Dell in Dynasty?
I love Tank Dell as a prospect. I thought, and the other thing with Tank Dell too is everybody was like, "Oh, is he going to be able to win on the outside because he's small?" He's played like out wide like 73% of the time. Right. It's not been a problem. I would still, I think, rather slightly have Collins, but yeah, I think Collins belongs in like the, I don't know, like Jahan Dotson, Deontay Johnson type range.
Okay.
I like, if you kept him at what, 43, I definitely would have thought that was too low, but 35 feels perfectly fine.
All right, I'll take it. He is currently between Marquise Brown and Calvin Ridley in my dynasty rankings, and Ridley is one of the fallers. We can go right there right now. Week 1 happened, and I tweeted, "Well, we don't have to wonder." Week 1 is
so dangerous for us.
We don't have to wonder if Calvin Ridley's still Calvin Ridley. He's clearly still Calvin Ridley. Look at what he just did. And it's not been that at all anymore. A couple of bad drops, couple of injury scares, really struggling with press coverage, and he's been shadowed by a couple of elite corners and maybe elite corners and not.
By the way, the Bills love to play press, so that'll be interesting this week.
Right. Not been able to get off the line of scrimmage. And really, I think 2 of his 3 touchdowns were just him standing in the back of the end zone, and the defense lost him, and Trevor found him.
Yep.
How are you feeling about Ridley? Is Christian Kirk this team's number 1 wide receiver again?
It's tough because we've also seen Zay Jones the last 2 weeks, and after week 1, and I myself included, the worry was Christian Kirk's not playing when they're in 2 wide sets. So we'll see if Zay Jones is back, what that does, but yeah, the other thing with Ridley, too, for Dynasty is we forget because he hasn't played in a while. He's like almost 30 years old.
28, yeah.
Yeah, which I always overlook because we're so used to him being so good coming out of Alabama, and then he obviously didn't play for a while. But yeah, I think Ridley's somewhere in between what we've seen and what we saw in week 1. Like, I don't think because after week 1, it was, okay, he's probably a top 12 receiver, right? I don't think he's obviously this bad because, again, if he catches a couple passes weeks 2 and 3, we might be talking about him completely differently, especially because a couple of those drops, like the drop in week 3 was just the perfect throw from Lawrence over the shoulder, would have been like a 30-yard touchdown. So maybe there is some rust to shake off, even though we didn't see it in week 1.
Right.
So I think Ridley is kind of in between what we saw in week 1 and what we're seeing right now. He's not as bad as we're seeing right now. That's for sure.
Are you buying as a contender? If you're a contender, there've been a couple of bad weeks and you're win now squad. Is that somebody you want as your number 2 wide receiver?
I honestly think I might look elsewhere. Yeah. But in general, I'm fine with the idea of it, but I might just look like a little bit I might honestly lean Collins at this rate.
Right.
Just because Trevor Lawrence is really good. We know that. But Collins we don't have to worry about, Tank Dell will have his 8 target games and stuff like that. But I think Collins is more of the one on his team definitively than Calvin Ridley is, which is kind of crazy to say, but I think we kind of have to get to that point at this point.
Rhamondre Stevenson was RB14, back down to RB18 for me. I was the low guy on Stevenson for about 6 months this offseason and then bought in at the end of the offseason. And man, he and this Patriots offense has just looked terrible. I kind of feel like now thinking about it, like I've got Rhamondre 2 spots ahead of Kyren Williams. I'm not 100% sure that I'm happy with that. Where are you at on Rhamondre? Are you willing to brush off this slow start? Are things going to get better?
So I'm a little worried. The run game has been completely inefficient. The offensive line's been bad. Stevenson hasn't been like what saved Stevenson the first couple weeks was massive production, the 2-minute drill.
Right.
And he's still playing the 2-minute drill offense. Like the Zeke report was pretty much bogus on Sunday about him getting starters workload. But I just think Stevenson, like we thought this offense would be not anything, unbelievable, but way more efficient than it has been. He's had some tough matchups, right? Dallas, the Jets. So he's had some tough spots, but yeah, like I definitely think he should be a faller for sure.
And we've got 2 more. Let's go with the wide receiver, T. Higgins. Don't know how long he's going to be out. Don't know how many games he has left with Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Don't know how many of those games Joe Burrow is going to be healthy. Higgins with the rib injury, he's fallen from wide receiver 12 to wide receiver 19. This sets up a nice would you rather in Dynasty, T. Higgins or Puka.
It's so tough because it seems like it's inevitable that he won't be back with the Bengals at this point, which scares me. But like, how long does Stafford have left for the Rams? I think I would lean Puka.
Yeah,
and it sucks because
it's hard. Yes,
I love T so much, but between him maybe missing a few weeks with the rib, Burrow not being healthy, even when he's like, we don't know if Burrow's going to be healthy all year. Right. We don't know if the Bengals. What if the Bengals are 1-5?
Well, that's what I just said this, like obviously tongue in cheek, but like if I'm the Bengals and I'm playing Madden, Burrow's going on the IR and I'm trading T. Higgins as soon as he's healthy. Yeah. And I'm going into next year with Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Marvin Harrison and just destroying everybody. But yes, I'm getting concerned that T. Higgins is just going to be a kind of a low end number 2 wide receiver. It's going to be so interesting if we get to see next season Burrow with just Chase and Higgins with someone else, and who is more impacted by that.
Mm-hmm. I'm like trying to think of some potential landing spots just because I'm pretty much sold that he will not be back with the Bengals at this point.
Well, maybe the Chiefs decide that wide receiver by committee doesn't actually work.
Yeah, they need to play Rashee Rice more.
I believe they're definitely going to. Last one, Darren Waller was tight end.
I was hoping we wouldn't have to talk about anything remotely relatable to that game yesterday, but here we are.
Well, we don't have Dan here, we don't have Adam here, so we can speak honestly. The whole thing looks like a disaster, and Darren Waller is not old enough and doesn't have the injury history to be able to sustain a disaster. Like we could be rapidly approaching the end of the Darren Waller as a tight end 1 era.
I was completely wrong. I talked about it after the Thursday night game against San Francisco. I was like, why? I don't get why everybody's worried about Waller. He dominated the target share in week 1, but didn't play in the second half because he was a little bit banged up and it was a blowout. Week 2 against the Cardinals, good matchup. He had like 76 yards. Week 3, didn't play well against San Fran, but again, bad matchup. I was like, this is nothing to worry about. And like, he might be their best offensive lineman at this point. So I don't like, there was a lot of plays where he wasn't running routes yesterday. That's a concern. They're scheming targets for Wan'Dale-Robinson for 4 yards a pop. That's a concern. Daniel Jones isn't playing well. That's a concern. Like, I have gotten to the point where I wasn't worried to, this sounds like it could be a disaster.
It looked like a disaster on TV last night, especially. I didn't like the body language we were getting from Brian Dable, really. And
the other thing too is, like, I tweeted it, like, if you had Waller on one of your fantasy teams, don't watch the replay of that Daniel Jones interception because he was wide open in the corner of the end zone.
Right. I do think that there is an opportunity that the Dolphins are going to put up 40 in the first half and Waller has some success and maybe you've got an off ramp there. I'm not quite to the selling low point, but he is tight end 11 for me. He is actually just behind Kittle. And I think if you told me that everybody in San Francisco is going to be healthy the rest of the year, I'd probably prefer Waddle to Kittle or Waller to Kittle. But Kittle has that out that something could happen to McCaffrey, something could happen to Debo, something could happen to Ayuk, and he could matter again. I don't know what that out is for Darren Waller.
And like Kittle, we know he has a lot of these like low floor games when everybody's healthy, but he could have 2 catches and outperform Darren Waller a lot of weeks at this rate. Like it's really bad. Like Brian Daboll, I've been disappointed with too. I know the offensive line's been a train wreck, but like there's been like Seattle. They talked about it on the broadcast yesterday. Seattle's missing their 2 starting tackles, and they went with a lot more creativity with play action and stuff like that to at least just stop the pass rush for a half a second.
CJ Stroud has, I think, averaged like 1.5 starting offensive linemen per game.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got all kinds of good things going on. Yeah, I don't need to hear about the injuries. Everybody's got injuries. We don't have any injuries, though. And we're all done here. Adam, really appreciate you joining me again. Tell the people where they can find you and what you've got going on right now.
Yeah, appreciate it. It was a blast. FTNFantasy.com. A lot of great stuff. I do this massive game-by-game article every week, which is really fun. I'll be starting to write more of that once we get off this. And we also have DVOA now. Aaron Schatz and everybody with the DVOA, it's live at FTN Fantasy. So it's been really fun to see that and all the amazing work that Aaron and a lot of the writers do over there, especially with DVO related content, which it's awesome because we didn't know where the home would be for DVOA, and it's honestly a pleasure to have it at FTN Fantasy. So check that out. And we have honestly like had to look at NBA Media Day was yesterday, so we do a lot of basketball content as well, which I am a little bit worried about because I do both basketball and football, but we will cross that bridge when we get to it.
That is, I've been in that 2-sport range, and it's not quite as fun as it looks, but good luck with that. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Schaefer. Thank you for everybody who listened, and we will talk to you next Tuesday.